You're live.
Okay, everybody, welcome to the Curriculum Instruction Committee meeting. President is Mr. Potts, myself, Walt Shaheen, Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Kurtz is on the phone. Dr. Otto's here, as well as our principal and vice principal from the high school. We have eight audience members present. The recording will be the official record of this meeting. And as always, I am going to have a hard stop at 9 o'clock, even though we got started a half hour earlier. I do that as a matter of policy because we do have a number of teachers in the audience as well as administrators that do have to get up at dark 30 to do their job. So it's only fair that we don't pull this thing out till 11 or 12 o'clock. Okay? These meetings are family meetings. I was hoping to see Mr. Blakesley here, but I don't see him here. If you have a question, you got a comment, you got a concern, if you just sort of raise your hand, I'll acknowledge it, and you don't need to step up or just sit right where you are and let it go, okay? We have 5 things on our agenda, and we're going to start off with number 1 that I asked the administration to look at, which was block scheduling. Give you a little background. The high school that I went to in upstate New York, New Hartford Central, is rated, I think, the 143rd best high school in the country out of some 5,000 high schools or something. They went to block scheduling a number of years ago. And speaking to the administration up there, they found that they found it extremely advantageous to give longer learning periods for some subjects. You could get into details more. You were able to handle misunderstandings or handle topics in much greater detail when you had a longer than your typical 40 to 50 minutes, depending upon the period that they have now. It's typically also what's done in colleges, obviously Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday type of scheduling on subjects. So I've asked Mr. Henkel to look into that and be prepared to talk about it. I know there's a couple of districts locally that have gone to or have looked at going to this. And obviously we can't jump into this next year. If this is something that the board decides they'd like to do, we obviously have contractual partners we need to talk with, as well as a chance to model it so that we just don't say, hey, you have till September to do it. If we're looking to do this, we need to look at saying next school year, which will be the 14-15 school year, and then we can start working on it now. So, Mr. Henkel, the floor is yours.
Well, what Mrs. Rexford and I did, we took a look at a lot of different things, and there's some passing around. And we talked. There was a discussion. I asked my fellow high school principals in Berks County, and there are a handful of school districts that do the block. Weiser does it; they love it. Exeter does it. I talked to Bill Kane, and he does not care for it too much. He doesn't care for the scheduling part of it because he does like 9, 10 standard, 11, 12 the block. And he said that's a mess. Twin Valley does it. It's in there.
Right.
Twin Valley, that's the present one. Now, Twin Valley's been in the newspaper, and this is where this whole thing came from, the whole idea of looking at the block. Their idea that they were going to condense and readjust their block, and to the tune of approximately a dozen teachers would not be needed. And it would save, I don't know, $500,000 or something like that. But they would have needed to reduce the student day, and that was shot down and not agreed to by the board. So they're staying at the standard block that they have that's included in the package. And there's another couple that are interesting. Boyertown is going to it this coming school year. I have Radnor there because I was there for a year. They do it. It's the college model.
Yes.
It's the 3 days of standard, 2 days of block. And talking to the principal of Boyertown High School, it has taken them 2 years to get that ironed out. Now, I've included some pros and cons and concerns regarding the block. Positive. As always, student-teacher relationships become stronger because both students and teachers have fewer classes to teach each semester. Discipline issues become lessened because of the reduced free time. Fewer students in the hallways, less classes, so and so and so forth. More opportunities are made for team teaching, especially between special education, regular education teachers. Mrs. Rexroad did a couple mock-ups, and using a standard 4x4 block, there are opportunities, more opportunities for team teaching between special and regular. An entire AP course is a positive, will be taught before the first test is given in May. That is also a negative for some people. More time is afforded to classes like F&C and tech and music, where setup and cleanup are involved in that, especially F&C.
Can we back up to I do know, I mean, having a daughter that's taking a lot, if not all, of her courses this year as AP. Last year, the issue was they went and took the AP Physics course, the AP Physics exam, and did not necessarily cover all the material that was on that exam.
Right.
And I do understand that once the exam is given, there's other things that are taught.
Right.
But and you know, I understand it's a negative that if by the time May comes around you take the AP exam, there really isn't anything left to teach. But I would have to believe that we would have to come up with something that we would have to teach them. I understand it's a negative that you've taught all your material, but you still have other things that can be taught.
Right, I'm not saying that way.
And I understand that there is that negative, but and especially when these are classes that are getting college credit for.
Correct. Another positive, especially in sciences, you don't have to schedule that separate lab period. It's basically included.
Right.
That's very, very important. A lot of times in the block, some of the things that the principal said, they don't worry too much about assessments anymore of kids not finishing, kids rushing, so on and so forth, because they're afforded that double time to complete things, especially now with our testing. There's more time for those open-ended type of questions, and that's much a positive. Fewer duties will be necessary. And then things to consider, the training. We need to train the teachers because teaching an 85 to 90 minute period is much more, much different than teaching the standard. Absolutely. The old idea of if I'm out a day, I'm actually missing double. If teachers are out, they're missing double. Things like that. The consideration of possible a student could go an entire year without having a class. Have something in the fall and then not having till the following spring. Say an English class or math class or something like that.
Can you explain that one again? You lost me on that one.
In other words, you have a semester break. Foreign language, because I remember this this is 2 decades now, this the debate on block scheduling. In foreign language, say you're taking Spanish 1, and the next time you do any Spanish curriculum, if you take it in the fall of your sophomore year, and then you don't take it again until the spring of your junior year, much more time has elapsed between the last time
Why
you
would
took
you
it
not take Spanish 1 the entire year?
Would that be count double?
Because you're doing your work in half a year.
You have a block.
If you have the block,
If you're doing the block that way, you could also do the block where Spanish was taught one day a week.
That's only in that version of
I mean,
block.
there are several blocks. And the block I'm thinking, and the block that I would perceive is that you would take your courses the entire year, where if you're meeting 5 days a week now for the sake of simple maths, call it an hour a day, you got 5 hours. So instead of doing it 5 hours a week, you're doing it Tuesday, Thursday for an hour and a half. And covering the same amount of material because it's not this is what we taught yesterday, now let's move on. It's an hour and a half of continual work.
So you're talking the college block.
I'm talking the college block type mentality.
The double standard and block.
Correct.
That's what you're looking at.
That's what I'm looking. I mean, I would not think that you would take. I would not be for taking Spanish in the fall and then not again till the following fall. It would be a you're still taking the same course for the entire year. You're adjusting your schedule for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday type mentality.
Right, but the people who are on the standard block.
Right. Don't do that. I understand that.
That's
I understand that. And I don't think we would want to do that because you're right. You don't speak a foreign language, you're lost by the time you come back. You're going to spend half your...
It's not just foreign language.
Yeah, anything. You're going to spend half your time bringing everybody back up to speed and then moving forward again. Bye, Connor.
I said this might happen. Just go ahead. I'll call him
And
back.
the other thing is the areas, I see Justin out there, the performance ends.
Right.
So what they've done in some of the blocks, they've paired up your, like the music end with the physical. So you have them all year.
Right.
But not every day, but you have them all year.
Right.
Because they are performance-based.
And again, I understand there's going to be things to overcome.
Yes. And the way I look at it is, the ones that we've talked about of the college appearance is something that the principals like Boyertown going to it, Radnor there, and a couple others who were there, they like that approach, especially for the upperclassmen, the juniors and the seniors. That's what they're going to be used to. Okay? And
You there?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all right. Go ahead.
so the way we want to look at it is get our schedule completed for next year, and then after we have our numbers in for this coming school year, get the schedule taken care of, and then create a mock schedule of what a block would look like.
Well, that was going to be my recommendation. So you know what you have now,
Correct.
and it's going to be quite an effort for you because I'm sure it's not something that you're just going to sit down and do.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah, it's going to take some time to put that together, but that'll give you some time to do, and then you're not going to necessarily know where you're going to put algebra, or necessarily know where you're going to put this. But if you already got a schedule put together, then you're just going to try to back model it. So the following year, you could say, okay, the board decides you're going to go block scheduling. We know that algebra will be offered period 1 of Monday, Wednesday, Friday block, and you can move that stuff around. So
Yeah, because on that you're looking at 3 days. You're doing away with the 6-day cycle.
right.
You're just having Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You're just doing away with the 6-day cycle. And so there's a ways to look at it. Do we go Monday, Wednesday, Friday / Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and then have the block in the
Right.
center? There's a lot of different ways.
There's a lot of, and we're going to leave that up to you. I think what we need to do is we got to decide as a committee whether we go back to the board with the recommendation to have you do that.
to create a mock-up schedule.
Correct. And then decide. I mean, again, it's going to be something that we're going to have to look at closely.
Sure, absolutely.
I think that's where the economy is going to push us to, unfortunately. But at the other end of it, as you said, though, when you're working on a concept in math or trig or calculus, that if you had the extra, I've talked to teachers, if you have the extra 10 or 15 minutes, those that are just not getting it, you may be able to get them if you had that extra period, that extra period of time.
Correct. And so what you're looking at then because Jenny and I weren't sure, so we looked at both. So the straight 4x4 is out.
I think so, yes.
Okay, so you're looking at the modified block, quote, the college.
Correct.
Block.
Because I don't want you to stop Spanish in December and not pick it up to September the next year.
What do you recommend?
I have a difficult time with not having a class literally for a full calendar year. That's tough. I can't visualize it. Betsy Adams out at Conrad Weiser, she swears by the block. They do, okay? Very few districts have it, okay? Maybe 25% in the county.
But I like
the college.
I can see where it works in biology.
Absolutely.
Because you're not going to take biology again. The next time you take a science course, it's chemistry.
Yeah, you're done with it.
And then the next time you take a course, it's physics, okay? In math, you're spiraling in math, right? You're learning in 1 year, you're building on the next year. So if in December you're finished until the next September,
No, to the next, it could be next January.
it could be next the year ago. It could be over. It could be one calendar year. You're going to spend a better part of a month just bringing them back up to where they were when you ended and running forward. So I think you lose people at that point. Not to mention where the Keystone exams are going to go.
Right. I couldn't imagine they could retain that.
No.
For that.
And teachers, talking to Brett Cooper out of Boyertown, when they were going to the college style, his big thing was, we have teachers geared up to the 45 minutes. We've had to train them. It's taken us a couple of years. We don't lose that piece of their mindset, because what we don't want is, okay, we're in a block, they teach for the 45 minutes and it's 45 minutes of homework. So that, I mean, that's something they needed to overcome.
They got to learn to use the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was, my children went through that when they were at Exeter, and that was one of their biggest complaints as a user, that the teachers were just teaching the same way they always taught. It was teach for a little while and then sit down and do homework. It was like, so you didn't have to take your homework home. I don't
You need
think
to
that's an effective use of the time.
You got to use the teaching time. Now, if you want to use 15 minutes at the end of the period,
Well, that's
start your
different.
homework to make sure you got the concepts down before you go. I don't have an issue with that.
Right.
45 minutes of teaching, and actually you end up teaching less
Well, you don't cover the content.
because you're only going to teach 45 minutes 3 days a week versus 45 minutes 5 days a week.
And from a scheduling standpoint, it does make it easier in one aspect to schedule the science labs. I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about scheduling science
No.
separate labs.
No.
You're put in on.
And you can handle the topic and then go right into the lab. And again, I was a biology major, and I know how difficult it was having a lab 1 day a week. You know, you had to you worked all the stuff and then went and did it. Where if you're already
Yeah,
working on the stuff,
I remember that.
and
That
jumped
wasn't
right into it.
Wasn't a lot
Right.
of fun.
So I don't think we need to have. Well, the board doesn't need to make any type of deal. We can ask you to go ahead and do that,
Correct.
and then we can bring that as a recommendation once you've got some type of work done moving forward. But I think, again, if we're looking at, we're looking at a lot of benefits. We're looking at potential increases in AP scores because you cover all the material, just not what they can get in. I'm not sure if all the other board members know, Rob, you probably don't know yet, but anybody who's taken an AP course, the tests are in the beginning of May, so they have to cram a year's worth of stuff as much as they can in prior to that May deadline when they take the AP, and then after that,
It's shut down.
they're shut down.
Okay.
And they don't necessarily get everything they need to do to take the AP test.
So what we would need to do, Danny and I would need to do, once given the directive by the board, and I'm going to assume it's going to go that way.
Well, I don't think the board's going to have to give you a directive. I think we can give you a directive
Okay, then
to
we'll
block
go.
it out. The board would give a directive to say, yes, that's where we want to go.
Because I would want to
Yeah.
visit, take a ride down and revisit and go over to the board of town, talk to Brett.
Right.
And talk to Ryder and anybody who has the college block look.
Mm-hmm.
And see what that looks like. So we'll finish our present schedule for the next school year.
Right.
As soon as we're done, we'll just create the mock-up.
And that would also allow for early outs for the seniors, too.
And it does help with we talked about in the fall, moving kids up, increased numbers in honors, increased numbers in those kinds of things. That twice a week block helps for that borderline student, maybe needs a little extra individual time with the teacher too.
Does this help us with our with the tech? Where does that run? Does that run into an issue? Getting them out to
I don't believe so. Everything that I saw in just doing research, it just so happens that, their period falls and then they go. So
Okay.
they pretty much have the same amount of time. I think on those block days, they have 2 blocks.
They're
at
kind
the
of already a
home school,
block.
and then
well, they
go
somewhat
there.
are, but I've heard from a few of the students that they were having, especially in mathematics, if they were struggling, there wasn't like you could come back after school because by the time you come back at 4 o'clock, whatever, teachers are gone.
Right.
So you're sort out there in no man's land. The extra period of time I'm looking at the extra period of time that could be helpful for a little bit of getting that stuff done. So if there's no objections, we can have them do as they said, finish the scheduling for the fall, and then have them mock up a college type block on mock up on this, and then maybe in September bring it back, or if that's enough time for you, to let us take a look at it prior to presenting it to the board. Because I think if the board's going to adopt something like this, you're probably going to want somewhere in the October-November timeframe to be able to be given the go-ahead so that you have enough time to start your in-services and training and everything else.
The staff development
The staff
piece
developmental
is key.
piece.
It's key to
And I
have
think
enough
the
time to do
transition
that.
It's like a transition. It's not like going standard to a total 4x4.
Right.
It's just that 2 days. You know, and I think that, looking at it that way, is a nice way to look at it.
Okay.
You guys have any questions?
I guess one thing unrelated, how was the, as far as incoming ninth graders, how was your, I got to commend you with your orientation for ninth graders. That was a very good program.
Well, thank you.
My son loved it, but you were really preaching on everyone trying to take a higher stance. Have you seen, going forward, coming in, that they're moving into the honors?
Well, I just got preliminary numbers actually today. Jenny and I were kind of going over them. This is with, as always, there's numerous students who decided they have not decided to do their schedules yet. So they're either going to do them or we'll do them for them. But let's just take a look at them. And Megan, you're out there. I'm meeting with the department heads. I already went with Mr. Palmer. To give you an idea, honors geometry 9. 15 students this year, 39 next year. All right. Accelerated trig 11, 39 this year, 42 next. Honors pre-calc 12 this year, 22 next. AP is about the same. AP stats the same. Conceptual algebra 1. This is another area we looked at. 83 this year, 72 next. Conceptual algebra 2. 86 this year, 75 next. Conceptual geometry 128 this year, 58 next.
Okay. Again, I mean, do you have the physics in there?
Not yet. I didn't fully type the ranges.
Okay.
Let me pull it.
That was the most glowing one, where half of our student body was in conceptual physics because they didn't pull the math or.
Conceptual physics 122 this year, 33 next.
Good. That's where I wanted to see.
AP Physics Lab, about the same. We have Earth and Space. You know, the big concern, as you and I talked about, well, everything, is 79 this year, 86 next.
Okay.
You know where the big increase went from human anatomy and physiology level, 26 to 50.
It's not a cakewalk course, so I mean,
No.
but my big concern,
doubled too.
yeah, my concern was we were forcing every student, junior, to take physics, and you know, unless, and the comment was, well, all colleges require physics, and we know that's not true.
Correct.
You know, if you're going into the sciences, you should have physics, but that's part of our guidance department to the guys. So that's why I wanted to see that change, and I think that change will definitely be beneficial to the students. So
It's not like they went from physics to baking, cooking. Or
no,
something.
no.
I mean, human anatomy, and physiology, and forensics, they're
Right.
difficult
Oh yeah, they're not easy classes. Did we also, as we had talked, and maybe you don't have that numbers, a lot of the seniors, by the time they get to be seniors, need maybe one elective and their core courses, 6 credits. And in the past, we booked them up 7.5 credits just because we wanted them in the building. I'm hoping that we saw a decline in that type of mentality this year.
I haven't gotten that.
Okay.
Those numbers yet. We're also looking at, doing some things where if the kids are done.
And the reason I'm saying that, Tom, is my son, they wanted him to take baking because he needed to take an elective. And it didn't make sense to stick somebody into a baking class because you needed to have an elective when he satisfied all his electives already just to have him in the building. So, and if he fails English next year, he failed anyways. And having baking wasn't going to make him pass.
No.
So, I fought that pretty hard, and I know a few others did. So I'm hoping you look at that very closely, because just filling up a schedule for the sake of filling up the blocks isn't going to help us budget-wise, nor will it help,
If we can
anything
get
else.
kids out who have parent permission to read, get them out.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, discipline will drop.
Right.
Kids can maybe go out and make a little money.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they have to come back for athletics, some of these practices don't
Right.
start till 5 o'clock.
Right.
Do what they need to do.
Right. Okay. Any questions, Rob?
Yeah.
Connie, you got anything on this?
No, I don't.
Okay. Anybody from the audience? It's never this quiet.
Wow, this is strange.
Yeah, I know. So, okay. Thank you. And we'll look forward to getting an update from you, and we'll let the board know the direction you're heading for this. But I do appreciate that. Number two, we have a librarian discussion. There was some discussion amongst the board during the budgetary process that potentially removing the librarians from the library, and I'd asked Dr. Otto to investigate the pros and cons of such and to get back to us.
We don't need them anymore, right?
No.
Nope. Thanks.
Basically, all I did was, at this point, and then we can open it up to some discussion, where we are right now is we have 5 full-time equivalents for our library program. If we implement the Encore reductions that we have talked about as proposed in the balanced budget, and we do not replace the latest resignation, as you know, Mrs. Gerhardt has left, and we had Mrs. Kaplan resign earlier in the year, we would be looking at having 3 full-time equivalents next year. Because if we maintain an Encore program, we would still need to maintain, there's also a library portion of that Encore program that still needs to be maintained. And then one of those 3 FTEs would be involved in just keeping minimal access to the secondary libraries at the middle school and at the high school. So that's obviously based on what might happen with, the budget reductions and things like that. Still an open item for discussion, but that's kind of the status of it, where it is right now.
Okay. You'll keep us abreast of what's going on with that when I guess as the budget flows out with the Encores and right now. Okay.
Absolutely. The only thing I would say is, I see Mrs. Massaros here, if you want to talk a little bit about what the elementary Encore library program looks like, it might help the board a little bit.
I believe it looks a lot different in the elementary grades. We really rely on them to interface with the regular classroom teachers. They help with research. They teach them how to actually read a book and the different kinds of genre. So there is a correlation between the two. They will do author studies, and it takes some of the burden off the classroom teachers to teach all those kinds of things.
But what we've done traditionally from a logistics standpoint is that library, it's not just, in the elementary it's a little different, it's actually teaching, it's not just kids coming into the library and checking out books.
Okay.
More at the secondary level, it's more of an access to the library and kids being taught what they're taught at the elementary Encore level, and then obviously as they get older and more knowledgeable about how to use research, they need access to the library. I imagine as technology starts to advance, there's probably going to be more of a change in the library aspect, as it already has taken place.
I mean, that was my question, and I don't want to insult, but when you get to the middle school and the high school, how much research is actually being done pulling the World Book Encyclopedia or a Collier's Encyclopedia or pulling a reference guide versus actually going out and pulling internet access? I mean,
oh, I'm sure it's.
I mean, that's the question that we get when this was brought up. I received 3 or 4 emails from the public saying, "Well, my son never brings a library book home. He's always out on the internet doing his research." So, I mean, that was the question. I think a legitimate question that is going to be raised by the public.
Mm-hmm. It's a reality.
And I'm,
with what we're maintaining, basically what we're maintaining at the secondary level with what I just mentioned, as is currently stated for the budget, if we passed it, as the way I said, with the 3 FTEs, it's minimal. There'll be times when there won't be somebody in the library. The teachers will have to take them there. This is the librarian kind of almost becoming more of a manager of the resources in the library than somebody that's actually teaching any kind of library or research program. A lot of that's at the secondary and middle school level. A lot of that's embedded into what the teachers are already doing.
Well, I understand in the elementary, you got to teach research. I mean,
right.
You got to teach what the difference between a primary reference point and a secondary reference point is. Why a magazine is one type and why the encyclopedia is a different type and a book is a different type, and how to cite those references. And I got all that. But again, like I said, we're talking, we were talking about potentially eliminating kindergarten at one point, and we're talking about all these other positions, and all of a sudden, library came up 1 or 2 meetings ago, and then the emails just started flying about my experience of this, my experience of that, my child, and it was just so I said, we at least need to address it to understand what the plans are moving forward. So I guess, the plans are we'll still fully staff at the elementary level, but at the middle school and high school level.
Again, from a budgetary standpoint, we're looking at 5 this year, down to 3 for next year.
Okay.
So that's a 40% reduction in terms of the amount of staff that we would have implementing the program.
Where would their home library be? Those 3.
The elementary schools.
Just elementary.
Throughout the elementaries.
We're going to shift them at any to the middle or high school?
No, we would still be able to maintain with the people that we have having the access. Well, you would basically look at your library. I don't know the exact schedule. They're just K to 12, and they would fill in where we need
So
them.
they'd be librarians at large where we needed.
Correct.
Okay.
It's one of those areas that I think, due to the advent of the internet, is really getting hit very hard, and it's kind of funny that I think libraries are becoming places there's a lot of books in those libraries that probably aren't being touched anymore, and they were ordered at a time when who knew what was coming.
I just say that at the high school, being in there, that the kids use the library a lot. And it's not in there, like, even the overdue list of library that we get is probably 10 pages, 15 pages of people who have actual physical books.
Okay.
That we get quarterly, I guess it is. So there's a lot of people who use the book. The kids want to go to the library. They use the computers that are there. They are upset with the current closure of it every other day. They're not happy about it.
What's the times when it is open?
It's like even days it's open, on days it's closed.
Yeah, I'm actually the middle school / high school librarian now. I was in middle school before. And she's right. I was at the high school today, and every single period there's like 20, 30 kids that can use computers. They, believe it or not, still do use the books. And I know at the middle school, my circulation last year was over 10,000, and I'm actually getting complaints from parents. My kid can't get to the library because it's closed all the time to check out books. So, yeah, and of course they have Kindles and things, and that's kind of frustration too, because I can't provide access to a lot of technology because there's no budget anymore. So we're kind of stuck with what we got, really.
Well, it's frustrating for some kids if their study halls are on the opposite days, then they don't have the opportunity to go to the
Right,
library.
right.
Because they don't have a study hall then.
Or they only have a study hall every 2 days of study hall and it's closed. And they don't, and they're having computer issues at home, or there's projects to do, or I need to go print this because it didn't work last night, even though they could email whatever, or I need to email this to the teacher. They use the library for that.
Are they using? Excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's okay. They're always in there.
Are they using it more as a business center, or as or are they using it as I'm going to go get a book off the shelf and read?
Depends on the student.
Okay.
There's some that are using it. I mean, there's kids who always have library books from our library that you see them all the time with them, and then there's other kids who either printer's broken, whatever, that they're doing it. So it's really a mix.
What's the access for morning, like first period?
We open at 7:30, but I had kids there this morning before 7:30. Like she said, during homeroom, they come in, I got to print out my paper, and there's and it helps to have someone there, if something goes wrong. I'm helping kids all day print stuff out, or, I need to find this or that. So if you look at the numbers of actual people coming to the high school, it's a lot.
And I wasn't trying to minimalize it. I'm trying to, get a concept of what, because all we're seeing as a board is people standing up and saying, you don't need the library because of the internet. I'm seeing emails saying the same thing. I'm not seeing much on the other end of it. Parents standing up saying, my kid brought 5 books home yesterday and he just devoured them. 3 days later, he's going to come back with another 5 books. So, I believe that's happening because I know a number of kids that the libraries are sole source of reading material. But, so we're trying to get a sense of what that was. And I asked last week to try to get a checkout circulation for the last couple of years to see if it's staying. And if you recall, I did ask that. I'd like to see. Has the circulation increased, decreased, or stayed the same for the last 4 or 5 years? Because if it hasn't decreased in the last 4 or 5 years, then that's telling me that the library is still as important now as it was 5 years ago. And the internet's come a long way in 5 years, in 6, 7 years. So if we can get like a 5-year recirculation rate, then we have an idea that, hey, you know what? We're still getting 10,000 books out of the high school checked out on an annual basis or a monthly basis or whatever else. And same thing at the middle school. And, we can address it from that angle. But not giving any data and sitting back, in my thing, I do nothing that isn't on the internet anymore. I keep no printed copies. Everything's electronic. And that's just the nature of the beast today's day and age. I have to go from my experience. I have to go from our constituents that are emailing me saying their kids aren't bringing books home.
But you have to remember our population, not all students, many of our students don't have internet.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
And that's the balance of it.
That's why I want the circulation rate, because if I can get that, it will offset the internet point.
The other thing is that with our students, I know the librarian is essential in the training and the research and everything, but in the times that they aren't available, is there, and this question goes to Encore, Mr. Rexford, is there another teacher who the place could be open, the students have learned the process, especially for the upperclassmen, know how to use the materials, that it's at least open for them? Because they want to go there. The days that it's not, and with everything, and I don't know the stuff and the numbers and whatnot, they want to go there, they want to be able to use the materials, they want to be able to study and do all those things. That is there another, instead of completely closed, is there an in-between?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I can't believe between all the study halls that we have, that we can't move that into the library and have that teacher for that study hall man the library.
Well, there's more than one study hall.
Right.
At the high school.
I can't believe you couldn't have that for every period then.
But you would really want those kids that are there, because I have study hall duty. If you have kids that are there to do other things, they don't really need to be in the library. Nor do you have enough room for all of this.
It's not big enough.
In there.
It's not a big enough forum.
It's just not a reason.
And as well as getting 30 kids in there that are coming out of other study halls.
Yeah. It's in the like how it's formatted and spaced out. It's not. There's a good bit of that are in study halls. It's just, again.
I guess it just comes down to, are there options to where we could do, not getting into the problem solving this minute with the differences that are going on, but is there a way that we could look at getting a teacher into the library to have it open and meet a need, but still have, the staffing for the study halls and things of that nature? That might be something we need to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds like at that particular point, it's really about having the availability of the resource rather than it is with the librarian teaching and
you
so
have to
forth.
make sure somebody in there was knowledgeable and comfortable with all of the resource and library materials. Like there has to be the balance of it. Like,
Right, but let's start off with the recirculation rates, because I think if we get some solid numbers that show statistically over the last 4 or 5 years they haven't changed, then it's telling me that the library is as important now as it was 4 or 5 years ago. Therefore, we either need to find a way of staffing it or find a way of doing something to allow it open for some period of the day.
Yeah, but I think it goes to 2 different ways there, because the people that are using it for the printers and for the internet access,
like a resource center,
you're not going to see that in the circulation number. You're not going to see that.
Can I just say that at the high school, every period each kid signs in, so you're absolutely right, the circulation at the high school isn't near as high as like at the middle school or one of the elementaries where they're coming once a week to check out their 2 or 3
That's
books.
true.
So we could give you a count like of the month, how many kids actually use the library.
That's probably what
Well,
would be more
again,
helpful
if
at that.
that's what you need to do to prove the point, then give me both of them, okay? Give me the research and the sign-ins. I don't want to be callous, but holding a library open for someone to come in and print their homework assignment because they didn't want to email it, or they didn't, or the printer didn't print it home is budgetarily
not feasible.
Not feasible. But if holding the library open because somebody needs to print a paper because the printer didn't work at home, but at the same time we have a huge circulation rate that would disappear also, then I can look at it that way.
Mr. Shaheen, could I jump in really quickly?
Just 1 second, Connor. There's somebody ahead of you, okay?
Let me know.
Okay.
You've got, the amount of computers that are in there. With a lot of the classes now that are dealing with computer-based answers. I mean, your science and your upper level classes, it's the I think the resource of that. It's not necessarily printing things out, but I've got 15 AP physics questions I need to answer, and that is the only time I can get to a computer because the rest of the computer labs, I mean, we're not letting kids in the computer labs just on their own.
See, you bring up a good point, because AP Physics, the homework was all done online.
Right.
And if you don't have access to a computer.
That's why I think what she can offer with the people, the throughput of the
Right,
library
right.
is probably more important.
Customer usage.
Right,
than what's coming out of
customer
it.
usage, right. Okay, go ahead, Connor.
Thank you. I know there used to be a program, and I believe there still is, where students could actually go and help in the library, and they would help check out books, and they would really do a lot of the work that traditionally, I guess, the librarian would do. I'm not sure what the title of the position was or whatever, maybe a library helper, but if we're looking for ways to keep the libraries open, if you can maybe couple those students with a teacher who has to teach a class in the library, or the students want to use the library, I think you could also alleviate some of those issues.
Yeah, I'm also trying to sidestep an unfair labor practice by removing a librarian from the library and then putting
Doing
a volunteer.
the same work with someone else.
Yeah, doing the same work with a volunteer, which we got to be careful on. But I do get your point, though. There may be some way of alleviating some of that other work. So let's.
But also give kids a good experience as well to help out.
So, or volunteer hours. So if you can provide the data, then we can move forward with that, okay? Okay. Anything else on librarians?
Not unless there's
libraries.
questions.
Okay. Number 3 was the elementary specials. I just asked Dr. Otto to very briefly glance over this because it's in our budget, the curtailment of some of the specials, and I just want to make sure that we feel comfortable, without details yet, because we obviously don't want to go into details until budget's passed, that you have a action plan to move forward.
We actually have, as you were referring to with Mr. Hankel, we have. If we had to go with the schedule tomorrow, we have it ready.
Okay.
Based on the criteria that we have established for reducing them to a certain level. Just again, for the benefit of everyone here, the current proposal on the table in our balanced budget is to reduce in varying percentages. They all won't look alike, but in varying percentages, each of the Encore subjects at the elementary level, which would be computer, art, library, music, and PE. And part of the reason that the way the schedule had been built in the past was to also provide teachers with their prep time, which we have to do contractually.
Mm-hmm.
So in analyzing this, we found out that we actually, based on the way the teacher day is built, have an excess of prep time at the elementary level that allows us to reduce these encores and still meet our contractual prep time. So I won't kid you, it will certainly result in a diminished amount of time on task with each one of these subjects. But again, from a Chapter 4, which is the statute at the State Board Regulations standpoint, there is no minimum or maximum that we have to do.
You have to give them a quote-unquote taste.
It has to be an experience.
Right, an experience.
And that experience could actually be embedded in with the regular ed classroom teacher. So,
well, I think a lot of us that are 30 to over 30 in the 40s and 50s, I mean, we in elementary school, your art class was ingrained in your homeroom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because you didn't. I mean, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you didn't really change classes too often. So that art class or that was ingrained. I mean, it was part of.
And there was no computer.
There was no computer. I don't believe music class was. We left for music, but I know art class was. Obviously, phys ed is going to be a little different, but you know, it's unfortunate, you know, the sign of the times. But if you've got, again, I don't want to go into a lot of details because.
Well, let me be specific about one of them. Let me just, for example, if art used to be 50 minutes, the way we're constructing the schedule, it may only be 35 minutes of art now. They'll still be getting an art from the art teacher. Contractually, we can go ahead under the demotion clause, demote those staff to the degree that we need them, and their workday then by contract then has to be reduced. That you can't do the same amount of work in less amount of time. We had an arbitration on that, and we lost it.
Correct.
So we have to make sure that there isn't, in fact, a reduced workload as well. The schedule that we have in place, we believe, will do that. So,
and we passed that by Mr. Subers, and he is fine with that.
Yes, we. It's not a pretty picture. It's not something we like bringing to the board. But in these difficult budget times, I look at it as we're still able to maintain this. Some school districts are talking about eliminating some of these completely.
Well,
from their
I've had
schedules.
some conversations with a board member on the western side of the state. It just happened to be, it was funny that it actually was in Ohio, that they are eliminating, they're eliminating art totally, and art is now becoming part of their science and their social studies, where they're going to be requested to draw pictures and do the pictures of the planets or something as part of the science course, and that's their feeling. That's part of their art class. I hope we'd never have to go that far.
We could technically,
Right.
if you read Chapter 4, it is
Right.
very, very, very non-specific in terms of there is absolutely no minutes in the state board regulations that says you have to do 40 minutes of art, 30 minutes of art, 20 minutes of music. It is totally up to the discretion of the board and of the local school district. One of the few places where we do actually still have some discretion for implementing curriculum. It would mean, and again, I don't want to misrepresent, it would mean less art. It would mean less music.
Yes.
You can't subtract out 20 minutes from 50 minutes and say you're still going to represent that you're doing the same amount of work.
And again, I want to reiterate and make this very clear that this is all still proposed, and nothing's in place till the end of June when we actually vote on the budget. That this happens, because there's a lot of moving pieces out there still.
What we have offered to the teachers that would be affected by this, an opportunity to sit down with us administratively for us to show them what their schedule would look like. So far, I've had one person come forward to have a look at that schedule.
Okay.
But we have not publicly released it. I don't think that would be appropriate at this point, given that it's still.
Well, I think you're putting the cart before the horse here, because it's not necessary yet. So.
And to be quite honest with you, the proposed closing of APC factors into how those schedules might be unfurled as well.
Right.
Because if APC were not to close, we have a plan A and a plan B.
Right.
So, but on paper, we're ready. Okay. It's just a matter of what final decisions are made.
Okay. Any comments on that? I know it's a. I know.
You know.
I know you were going to that. I'm surprised it took you that long.
Just to clarify, are you counting the proposed elimination of elementary band as an encore, or is this a separate thing?
Elementary band is not in that conversation I just had.
Okay.
It's the elementary general curriculum,
Okay.
general music curriculum. Elementary band is a separate strand that the board obviously has to weigh in on as well at the end of the day.
But the same teachers are involved with that, correct?
And the plan that we have is predicated on a number of scenarios. So yes.
Okay.
It would be the impact on the same staff. That is correct, because they are implementing that program.
I just wanted to
Yes.
clarify that part.
Yes.
The students wouldn't have the experience of breaking out for their instrument, correct?
If the board were to, as of the passage of this budget, say elementary band program has been eliminated, that would be a correct statement. Then we wouldn't be doing elementary band pullouts for the way they configure them. I guess it's in small groups and individual groups.
Small groups, and then the large group is.
And then there's once a
before or
week.
after school, depending.
Right.
on
Right.
that.
Now, Governor Mifflin overcame that model by doing something a little bit different, by having them after school and working with because that was a pretty large outcry when that happened in Mifflin. So they say they have a model that we could borrow if, in fact. we decide to go
And I've heard
with it.
that, and that is something that when and if the time comes, we would get with our contractual partners and as well as the administration, because people that teach music don't teach music because they're making a lot of money. They teach music because they love music and they love what they're doing. And if we were able to do an after school
Right.
program with them for that and get it compensated, whether I know some places that the parents are paying it like it's a music lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I talked a month ago
Yeah.
to Dr. Otto and Mrs. Trainer, so
Yeah.
there was always a possibility.
Yeah, maybe if we could potentially allow the music teacher to use our facilities and then use it as a music lesson,
And
they're paid by the parent for that lesson, who knows?
And I actually.
And I am
No, go
familiar
ahead.
with the Mifflin model,
Yeah.
but in all fairness, I have to take a little bit of a defensive stance on that. You're saying that music teachers, well, we'll do it for less money. Well, why
No, I didn't
not?
say that.
We don't teach for the money, we teach for the love of music. I think you could say that about any educator. So
Correct.
Hold on, man.
No, but my point was if everybody involved wants to work, there are ways to do it that are budget neutral to us.
Understandable.
Okay.
I think the will for everyone, for the music teacher, and mainly it's for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should come together on that. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to see that leave at all. So, I mean, I'd rather have something than nothing. And hopefully we can come to an agreement.
But I know that I attended a superintendent board president's dinner last month and had the opportunity to speak to Mr. Ulrich, who is the president of the Mifflin board, and he said he would be happy to share or put us in touch with somebody in Governor Mifflin that could share the plan that they're using, and he said it's working out really well.
Okay. The last topic here was elementary guidance. I had asked Dr. Otto with the potential closing of APC, because again, we can't say that APC is closing until we actually do our due diligence and vote on it. Were there additional potential savings that were there? And one of the again, you know, we all get emails from our constituents, and elementary guidance was a one that was brought up by many, saying, do we actually really truly need a guidance counselor in each building? So that's, you know, at the elementary level. So I had asked Dr. Otto to at least address that publicly so that we would have something that we would be able to go back to the board with, as well as anybody who had asked us that question.
All right. For those of you that heard the first presentation on the guidance, on the APC closure, we reflected different monetary savings as a result of that. A guidance counselor was not in that money. So I'll go to the end of the conversation. If the board were to decide, and we administratively were to eventually come forward with a recommendation to reduce, that would add a certain amount of funds to that figure. It would make it larger. We were hoping at this point, and I'll just say it, the recommendation at this point, and again, trying to balance it out with the budget, was to maintain the same level of guidance staff, given that we were actually going to go ahead and reduce an administrator, for the simple reason that close to the same amount, not obvious, it's going to drop by about 40 students. We're going to lose 40 students at the elementary level. We would still have close enough to the same amount of students to need, quote, the guidance services that at this point I'm still of the ilk to recommend keeping a guidance counselor, but it is obviously something that can be discussed, and obviously the pros and cons of that can be weighed in on by the different groups. I think as much support as you can provide a student, whether it be through a teacher or a counselor, is always a good thing. But again, I am also sensitive to the need to get this budget balanced as well. So we have a counselor here. We have an elementary principal here. They can certainly weigh in on it as well. But at this point, strategically and logistically, that counselor is still in the budget. Okay. But it doesn't have to stay.
Okay.
I've sat through the last 3 or 4 years of these budget cuts, and as a principal, I said, okay, we can make this work. Okay, we can make this work. I can see the positive. But this is the first time where I say, oh no, I can't make this work. A guidance counselor to a principal is the right hand. We're talking all the multitude of pseudo-administrative jobs that they do. When Miss Fink starts her day from 8 o'clock till 5:30, she's still fielding questions. She's still working with kids. She's still working with parents, and she works with teachers too. Whenever I'm out of the building, I know that if there's a problem, she'll call me or she can take care of it. And that is the fine way that they take care of things. They have, even during lunch, they don't have lunch breaks. They eat with the kids. Their day is full.
One of the things I would say, because I'm actually, not to tout my own horn, but I have my master's degree in counseling. I've never actually worked as one. A lot of people misunderstand or don't quite understand, I guess is the way to say it, misunderstands the wrong word, the social connection that the counselor provides between you talk about that triangle, the home, the school, and the family. The counselor is kind of that glue in there that helps bring all of that together, and is the person that sometimes spends a lot more time on the phone and resolving issues with parents than the actual teacher has time to do. Because without that counselor, I think a lot of that would fall back on to the teachers in terms of having to solve, quote, those social issues. And I think at the end of the day, would pull away from their instructional role, which I think as much as we can maintain their instructional role and protect the sanctity of that, I think it's important.
I think the question I still have, and I'm glad you're here because you can answer, I mean, again, I'm going to be naive. I mean, I know what a high school guidance counselor does. What does an elementary school guidance counselor do that, I mean, because a high school guidance counselor helps the kids select their courses and, they make sure they have enough credits to graduate and that whole process. But what exactly does a K to, I mean, you're K to 2, K to 5 guidance counselor do?
Well, I can relate to that because when I first went into getting my certification in counseling, I went for secondary because I'm thinking, what in the world is an elementary counselor?
Yeah.
Then I actually got involved in it, and the amount of time that I spent, and this is just my internship experience, sitting around in an office doing paperwork and not have that one-on-one interaction. I spent more time behind a desk in the middle school and high school setting. Not that what we were doing wasn't important, but I mean, it is building the basics developmentally, coping skills. I run social skills groups. I run coping skills groups. I do foresights where I collect them. TSSAs, I'm in charge of collecting them, administering them, sorting them, counting them, running that whole thing. As far as communicating with parents, you would be surprised how many students have issues with anxiety in elementary school between transitioning, getting to know a bigger building. It's all those small things that they have to learn to developmentally cope with or deal with that we just take for granted. And these days, with the lack of support at home from parents, that's the biggest factor. Not having both parents there, or somebody's living with grandmother. Constantly checking in. If I don't have a student in my office, I'm out observing to make sure that I understand the teacher's role. I understand how the students are learning. Is there something that I can add in? What am I trying to get across to the entire school? Starting programs where, whether it's an art club, and it's about taking up bullying. Because right now, that is the biggest thing in our school is kids learning to deal socially with each other. And with the access of the internet, those kids are at each other whenever they want. They can access each other. And, it seems like all this stuff stems from outside of school, but it's brought into school, and it's managing pretty much. And trying to be proactive as much as possible. But like she said, I don't eat lunch. And if I do, it's with the kids, and I enjoy doing that. And I also am there till 5:30, starting at 7:45 every day.
And you're at APC?
AIC.
AIC, okay.
Can you talk a little bit about, I think, one thing that you left out, and I'm not being critical, the level of interaction that you have a lot with our special needs students, because I used to supervise both of those programs, and it was nice to be a supervisor over that because I could see the direct link. But why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Right now, a lot of the bullying, so to speak, I have an art club right now where I am running, we call it an art club, and we do anything, we're working on a video that we're trying to put together where the students who have an IEP and are behind a little bit in the social area are working on going out and interviewing other students. So it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. And the other piece that we do is a lot of coping skills and social groups.
Because I'm going to interrupt you a little bit, because I know at the Birdsboro Elementary Center we have an emotional support class, which could probably in many cases have its own counselor dedicated to it, which we don't. We have an autistic support class, I believe that's at AIC, APC. That group of students, autism by definition is social ineptness. So they need that extra level of support. And then we also have our life skills class, and they bring their own set of needs. And those needs are more pronounced in those populations at the younger ages. And I know that the counselors at that level provide a vital link to helping these kids develop socially, which is one of their biggest hurdles. So, I mean, I could sit here and advocate all night for the different things. It becomes, again, a question of, are the funds there to get this done?
Well, let me take it to the next step, okay? You have lack of another. You have 3 buildings and 4 guidance counselors. The odd guidance counselor out. What is that person's role going to be? Because if you're already at AIC doing the role, you're already at Monocacy doing the role, you're already at Birdsboro doing the role. Granted, we're taking the students from APC and we're populating 2 other buildings with them. So the
at this
load,
point, if that's
right. If that school closes, and we vote to do that, you would populate 2 other schools with extra students, meaning the load of AIC's guidance counselor increases, load at Monocacy's
would increase.
What is the role of this other guidance? Is it going to be a roving guidance counselor?
My recommendation would be to rove them between those 2 buildings, that they would become APC or AIC and then MEC, because that's where those, it would flow logically that's where those students.
Your groups are going to get bigger.
Right.
So what can you safely maintain and educate what she's doing right now to where you diminish that?
I would put that question on them.
As far as, obviously now the groups are going to get larger when these students, if the students would be moved. So obviously, when would that diminish what your job is with a larger group versus 1 or 2 to a group? I mean, how many do you have in your group now, per se, and pick a group out?
Adding first grade or second grade to the APC population, those students, the kindergartners, first grade and second grade, are still learning to be students. And that's a whole different kind of coping skills that she didn't even mention. But that's a lot of our issues. And actually, as a principal, I've seen more children in K-1-2 setting than I do 4-5 setting.
I would believe the early on last years would be more difficult. And that's probably the more critical years.
Yes.
What I would like to see from the administration, and you can probably have to get these two individuals to help you, is that if we were, and I keep having to use this word, if we were to close APC, I would like to have a clearly defined model for this roving, because I don't want to just say this person roves, because
I just use that.
But I want it to say that this person will take autistic support at AIC now because it's not at APC. I want this person to say at Monocacy it will do X. If we send that person to Birdsboro to do, I'd like to know a specific set of roles.
We'll be prepared to do that
for that, because if you don't do that, it's going to be very hard to sell it to anybody that it needs to be a role, because all you're saying is, I got the fact that your load increases, but did your load increase significantly enough to warrant a half of the head count at your building? I don't think so. I think that if you take specific tasks that were existing and reassign them, then you even that load out between between the 3 buildings possibly. But if you don't do that, then it's going to be very hard for me to stand in front of the board and say, yeah, the curriculum committee recommends keeping that position. Then they're going to say, well, what's that person going to do? And I'm going to look over to here, and he's going to look over to there. I'd feel much better to say, we're going to keep this position, and this position will be doing, and lay it out, because those are the positions that are falling between the cracks and or are going to get much larger. Because handling a autistic group at APC is going to be much larger now when you roll it into AICs with the autistic children at AIC. So you go from 8 students per se to 21 students. It's going to be a much larger group to handle, and those are just numbers. But I have no idea what the population is.
Guidance counselors would never turn their back on other students. You just can't limit her role to autistic students. But I could see it working if we said, okay, the guidance counselor would take care of administering the foresights or work with PSSA, those kinds of things.
I don't believe I said
okay.
Limit. I said I'd like to know what roles and duties that person will have. Whether, because I know, I don't think there's a person in this room that's going to turn their back on a child that needs help in an educational standpoint.
Well, we could do those other kinds of things.
Right, but I'd like to know what roles that they're going to take because, again, I'm going to repeat, adding the APC students to both your building as well as Monocacy does not necessarily double the duties of those guidance counselors. So I'd like to know what duties those guidance counselors, what that roving guidance counselor would do. That's all.
Well, I understand there's a lot of paperwork to take care of. I don't mind doing that, but that's a huge chunk of time between managing the parents and the paperwork and questions about, IEPs and 504s and TSSAs and accommodations and just and then there's the foresights or whatever.
Counselors generally are almost always a part of every IEP team.
And again, that's going to be key because, as you may know, that in the board's budget there is a reduction in school psychologists by one head. So, you're bringing up points that we need to have so that we can make an informed decision. Because we just don't want to make a decision off the cuff and then have it come and bite us later on that, hey, we made a wrong decision because we didn't get all the information. And honestly, the only person that give us that information are you two, as well as the teacher and the principal at Monocacy and that guidance counselor.
At APC, we had a model 2 years ago where we split the guidance counselor. One from the middle school. We actually had two. One came in the morning, one came in the afternoon. And it really didn't work because if one guidance counselor worked with the child in the morning and then in the afternoon there was a different guidance counselor there and there was a problem, she wasn't familiar with the situation. That's why I was saying that let's maybe think about administrative.
I want some clear cut, and believe me, I was on the board when they were talking about cutting the guidance counselors at the high school. It wasn't too many years ago they were talking about going from 4 to 3, I understand the importance of the guidance counselor. I just want to be able to sit with the other 5 board members when this is brought up and make sure that everybody understands, and then they can make an informed decision upon how they feel it should be done. Okay?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
And I don't know enough about the situation to have a position or an opinion on it. And I agree with what I just heard, that there's a lot less guidance in the home nowadays. But if you eliminate a school, you still have a guidance counselor in each elementary school.
Correct.
And what I just heard the principal say is the other situation that didn't work is you had one in the morning and one in the afternoon. So isn't that the same thing with a rover who is only at each school part-time? But my bigger question is, and I had asked Dr. Otter this a couple of months ago about all administrative positions. This guidance counselor may be overworked. I don't know. But has anyone ever done an independent desk audit on all your administrative positions to see what you really need? Because what you're talking about now is possibly eliminating a school but keeping a position that you don't have in the other 3 schools now. And you're talking about, yes, you're going to take the APC children possibly and spread them over, but does that increase the workload and knowledge?
That's what I'm trying to get to, Rich. I'm trying to find out, are we necessarily going to increase, right now, if we take these students, we split them between 2 buildings, did I increase her workload 50%?
Or did you increase her workload beyond which can be handled?
Correct.
I think that's what I asked as far as how many would be added to a group.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to, come to grit.
But the only thing I hear you doing to find the answer is asking the question.
I'm asking them to come back with some data for us, some information for us.
But with all due respect, that data would be self-supporting, wouldn't it?
Well, one would hope it wouldn't be, but it may very well be.
If you're going to ask me to support my job, I'm going to come up with data.
Right.
That's why I asked you about independent desk audits, Dr. Hoffman.
I don't know what an independent desk audit is.
It's somebody determining, does somebody have required work all day long?
I would say for every administrative position we currently have, that's an absolute yes. We have a full job description for every employee that we have on the administrative team. And when we make reductions in administrators or reductions anywhere, that work has to be divvied up over to other people.
And didn't you tell me there were guidelines for how many students a guidance counselor should have? Weren't there recommendations? Dreaming that?
No, this was just a number that I was told when I went to grad school recently, which was 350 is supposed to be
the ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are no state guidelines. There are no state mandates.
Those are recommendations.
In fact, the state doesn't.
Those are professional recommendations.
State doesn't even have mandates to have a guidance counselor at any level.
We know.
Okay, so.
But what the ideal recommendation was 365, and now we're talking 800, 700 kids in the building.
I mean, I just know that there are constantly phone calls coming in. I'll have a student sitting in front of me, and the phone's ringing. It could be behavior management. There's a child who needs a break, and the teacher has to run her classroom, and they're not able to handle that. I had a child come down and visit me 4 times, and this is a student he's a phenomenal student. And, this is just stuff that pops up that he had to leave his classroom 4 times because of being so upset and overwhelmed. And the teacher said, "I'm really sorry I had to call you in the middle of whatever else we were doing, but we really needed you at that point because I needed to teach my lesson." So there are a lot of times that I'm picking up what they're not doing because they're not able to, because they have that time frame. They have to cram all that stuff.
Well, can you? And again, our next meeting will be the beginning of May. And I'm going to ask
May 1st, I think.
May 1st. I'm going to ask this of you as well as the 3 other guidance counselors. I would like a list of duties that you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, okay? For no other reason, and this may backfire, that there may be things you shouldn't be doing. There may be other things you should be doing. But I'd like to see, from a guidance counselor standpoint, what you do. Okay? Okay, and I would like that from the APC, AIC, Monocacy, as well as BEC. Just so we have an idea what the guidance counselors do. It's a job, I mean, I do it all the time when I had sales reps who work with me. I'd want to know how much time you spent selling, how much time you spent service, and how much time you did administratively. So I could see and if you weren't selling enough, it's because you're probably administrating too much. I want to see what it is, just so I have an idea so that we can, look and see, do we need to start somewhere to look at auditing, your bandwidth? Is your bandwidth too much or not enough, or just to get an idea of what you do? Okay? Thank you.
I think that's really important, because some of the things you described, I would think that, and this is me in the cheap seat, it's not a guidance counselor function. So that it doesn't mean that what you are doing is not important, but there's more than one guidance. There's more teachers than a guidance counselor. So should that be at a teacher responsibility? So that's why I agree. I think that's extremely important.
And are you doing something? And again, please, I'm going to ask on your professionalism that you don't collaborate with your other guidance counselors, because are there things that you do that the other 3 don't do? And are there things the other 3 do that you don't do? Because it's going to give us an idea very quickly whether we're the same across the district, which we're supposed to be, or whether
you have a job description,
right? Or are there pockets of things that are being done, and it may be being done because of the population that you're dealing with, okay? And that'll become, and we'll have to address that separately. Or is it being done because of the lack of abilities of your principal to handle it, or the lack of the ability of the teaching staff to handle some of this stuff, which we may then be able to handle by in-services and handle some other stuff. So I'd like to see if I could have that prior to the May 1st meeting. I'd appreciate that. Anything else on that? Okay, appreciate it. Other topics. Our next meeting is May 1st. I don't have my glasses on.
We should be probably getting at the next committee meeting some update on
Yes.
what we want to do with the graduation.
Yes, we're definitely going to deal with that. One of the things that we constantly have to address is graduation requirements. Now, the state's done away with their graduation. They say you just have to have so much, and we adopt a graduation requirement. The issue we have, it's very easy to say, hey, let's eliminate, in this case here, which is we're going to have to address, let's eliminate driver's education. Okay, let's eliminate driver's education. Why should we pay to teach a kid to drive when, it's a parent's function to drive, or you can go to driver's education school to teach you to drive? Well, we can eliminate driver's education this year. Say that, no more driver's education. But that doesn't take effect for 4 years. Somebody coming in, a 9th grade student this year, was accepted with the graduation requirements of driver's education. And we can't change that by state mandate. We have to say incoming students. A perfect example was the graduation project. If you remember, for a number of years, a student had to do a graduation project to graduate. And they changed that so that the graduating class this year is the first class that didn't have to do a project, I believe. They had to take a course in, help me out here. What? Career education instead of doing a project. But they put that in 4 years ago. So, but you had to wait until that group that was 9th grade aged out. So we want to very, very clearly look at graduation requirements. It may not be a short-term fix, but it definitely is going to be a long-term benefit. As I was telling Mr. Henkel, having a child take, baking just because you want to fill up electives is ridiculous. So we want to make is not a proper use of time, especially when you know who the child is. So I want to make sure that we have graduation requirements that are proper, graduation requirements that meet the fully rounded student, but at the same time meet our budgetary concerns and needs. So that's going to be a big topic next meeting. We're going to look at again the guidance counselor's issue. Can I also ask Dr. Otto that we have a overhead and a projector up there, because I'd like to be able to project some of what they
Sure.
bring back. I mean, nothing that this isn't a big deal because we talked about, but I don't want to sit with 20 people in the audience and talk off of 3 pieces of paper without them being able to see.
We'll do a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. I don't even necessarily need a PowerPoint. I just want to project what they talk. I don't want to flash things up and have it figured out.
That's just the easiest way to do it.
But whatever that is, okay. Any other topics from board members you'd like to see? I mean, that should be pretty hefty, just those 2.
That's enough.
I've got a note here to talk to Mr. Subers about the driver's education situation. Do we have the ability to remove driver's education and add a alternative option, or do we need to stick with driver's education until?
If you turn it as an option, then the parent could pick it up, correct?
No, again, I'm talking about it. Right now, driver's education, which is a quarter credit, I believe.
In other words, it would have to be in your transcript.
0.33. Would we be able to offer an alternative 0.33 and still remove driver's education? Or because it's part of the graduation requirement of a 9th grade student this year, is it still required until that 9th grade student graduates? And I'm having them look at that. Because if we're going to change it, we need to change it for incoming 9th graders this year for it to take effect moving forward. Yeah. Okay. If anybody else has any other subject they'd like to, if you can send me an email, we'll try adding them. But like I said, we do go through quite a bit. Okay? Any other questions? Connor, you got anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right, good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
You hang around. We need to talk to you.
Yeah, so I emailed one of my friends who's a